There is one mistake that I've been making in my practice for years, and it's something that I really wish I understood earlier. And as I've taught meditation and guided people on their own paths, I've realized that this is a super common mistake. And today I want to share it with you in the hopes that it'll save you a lot of difficulty and bring more peace and ease into your practice and into your life. Also, the answer to why I was practicing in this way and why so many practice in this way, the answer really surprised me, opened my eyes to some things that I hadn't really noticed before. So stay tuned for that because I think you'll find it really interesting. So the mistake that I was making, and we use the word mistake, understanding that it's part of learning and growth, and arguably, if I hadn't made this mistake many times, then perhaps I wouldn't have the depth of understanding that I have now. But anyway, the mistake that I was making was using my practice as a tool to fix myself. Maybe you can relate. So let's set the scene and use an example. Let's say that you are feeling anxious about money. I've gone through many phases in my life where I've felt anxious about this. As someone who has a personal practice, you might say to yourself, oh, I'm feeling this anxiety and I should go to my practice. Why? Because it'll make you feel better. It might be meditating, it might be going for a walk, it might be journaling, it might be doing breath work or yoga or whatever the thing is for you. Why might we decide to go to our practice in these moments? Of course, to feel better, maybe to fix. When you really pay attention to the intention that brings you to practice, it might be because you want to fix or change something. You want your problem to go away. You're human, of course you do. You go to your practice as a remedy, a solution. You go for a specific result. And right there is the problem. There's an expectation of a certain outcome. We're going to practice with this intention to fix or change something. It's a very results-oriented motivation. Maybe you can relate. For years, I practiced in this way, going to meditation with an agenda, with this intention that I was going to change the way I felt. And honestly, it worked a lot of the time. Naturally, if you sit down and breathe and try to relax and really give yourself space, you're probably going to feel a little bit better. You're probably going to feel a bit more calm. Depending on how your practice goes, there probably will be a shift in your mood. And sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes I wasn't able to shift my mood or feel better, and I would try harder. I would maybe think that I needed to meditate longer or that I did something wrong, and I would fight and force. And so when you really pay attention to the energy behind that, there's a judgment, right? There's this sense of this is not right. What I'm feeling is not right, and I don't want it, and I need to fix and change this to be okay. And a lot of this stuff goes hand in hand with perfectionism, which I have, with our culture of toxic positivity, and also like, how are you going to manifest what you want if you're thinking this way, if you're not feeling good all the time, right? So depending on your personality and your orientation in the world, there's a lot of pressure to show up in a certain way and to fix yourself and feel better. So there's a sense of forcing a specific outcome. And underneath it all, there's a sense of non-acceptance. There is suppression, there's forcing, there's control, there's rejecting and resisting against what is. And so already as I'm talking, there might be little alarm bells going off in your mind that you know this is not a skillful way to navigate our practice or our life. There's a really popular story, I guess like an analogy in Buddhist teaching about the second arrow. If you're a meditator, you've heard this 1,000 times before, but it's a really good illustration. So the first arrow is that difficulty that we have in life that we cannot avoid. Life will just bring difficulty and pain for us. And that second arrow is when we don't accept it, when we judge it, when we hate the world for it, when we poison ourselves with anger and resentment and hate. And sometimes it's not just a second arrow, it's a third, fourth, fifth, but you get the idea. Those arrows are unnecessary. The first one we can't really do much about, but if we navigate our emotions skillfully, then we can avoid adding all of those extra arrows on top. There's also a lot of science that shows that avoidance and control of our inner experience can create more suffering for us, and that acceptance of our inner experience is really what supports well being. If you're the type of person who appreciates evidence based information, which I am, I'll leave those links below. I think a lot of these studies also support acceptance and commitment therapy too, if you're interested. So I think it's pretty clear that fighting how we're feeling, suppressing our inner experience, trying to control and fight and resist can really add more suffering and make things more difficult for us. And we'll talk about a more skillful way to navigate these experiences and how to bring this into our practice in a moment. But first, I want to share what I discovered about why I practiced in this way for so many years and why I know so many of the people that I teach meditation to also tend to practice in this way, which is approaching practice as a tool to fix or change or improve their experience. So here's what surprised me. This way of approaching our practice is actually really rooted in our cultural values. Even though I grew up in Iran, I grew up here in Canada, so really grew up with Western values. And so part of these Western values is this culture and this mindset of productivity, of getting things done, of improvement, of personal development, reaching a good outcome, and generally this very results oriented approach to things. And so, whether it was just in the culture around me or these implicit values and a lot of the instruction that I was getting from the teachers that were teaching me meditation and mindfulness and these practices, there was this sense that we're doing this to get to this. Here we are. This is not where we want to be. This is the desirable outcome there. So let's do what we need to do to get over there. Without getting too much into masculine energy and feminine energy, I just do want to note that there is this sense in a productivity mindset, this sense of being results oriented, being attached to the outcome can be seen as a more masculine energy. So when you think about the world that we live in and the systems of the world and the styles of leadership in the world, it's just interesting to note this persuasion. That's all I'll say about that right now. I am working on a video that'll go deeper into kind of questioning the origins of a lot of these practices and teachings and where they come from and the importance of assessing if they're right for us. And not only does this mindset of productivity and chasing a certain outcome come from our cultural environment and perhaps from the teachers and the teachings who come from these cultures. But also, it's important to note that this is the nature of our mind as well. I've talked a lot before about the nature of grasping for things, of constantly seeking and chasing. So it's important to note that there's really that element in us. There's that drive in us. You can argue that as biological beings, we're wired to seek more, better, different, improvement, change, all of that. And then coupled with when you're not feeling great, of course, it's the most natural thing in the world to say, I want to fix this, I want to change this. So I'm not saying here that there's anything wrong with feeling that way or having that tendency to want to fix or change. It's just about questioning, is that the most skillful way to work with our emotions, to work with our inner experience in our practice? And this mindset of wanting to change something is also rooted in judgment, right? Naturally, if you want to change something, there's a judgment, there's a sense of labeling it as undesirable and wrong. And so there is something that needs fixing. And then to take it one step even deeper, it's also rooted in a sense of duality. So there's this idea when we have the urge to go to our practice or to do anything to change the way that we feel, there's this inherent belief that we're deficient, there's something wrong, there is something that is incomplete or not right, not whole, and that we need to do something to be right, to be complete, to be whole, to be good. And I'm not even going to get into Christian religions or anything around original sin because I really don't know enough about it. But that was one little light bulb that went off in my mind as I was preparing for this video, that there really might be something there, this sense that we are inherently incomplete and not good, and we need to change ourselves or do something to be worthy or good. So really interesting stuff. Would love to hear your comments if you have more to say on that. So before we move on, I want to say that I don't think it's the fault of any certain tradition or school of thought, meditation instruction or teacher or anything like that, especially in Eastern wisdom traditions, especially compared to Western wisdom traditions. There is an emphasis on acceptance, on allowing, and that who we inherently are is already whole and good. In fact, I remember over the years getting deep meditation instruction, especially when you're attending retreats. You get daily interviews with the teacher. You get to really share what you're navigating in your practice really deeply with the teacher. I remember many times getting the guidance to accept, to allow, to create space for. So, why did I keep falling into the habit of trying to fix or change? Of course, building a habit is hard. A lifetime of thinking that I was supposed to change or improve myself was going to take time to develop a habit of acceptance and allowing. And of course, even when we have the realization and the intellectual understanding, it takes time to integrate and embody these understandings. But I think what also would come up for me is that it's hard to remember, even when you know how to practice and you have been doing it for a long time, it's hard to remember how to navigate difficult emotions, especially when they're really difficult and really intense. It can be hard to reach for our tools, and it can be hard to remember how to use them properly. And I've said this before in other videos, but I really felt like I was missing a map, which is why I ended up developing a map for myself. I needed something that was super easy to follow, step by step, not ambiguous, not scattered and confusing, really clear and simple, so I wouldn't try to bypass or force anything. I truly, even to this day, need to give myself those gentle reminders, which is why I made the map, which is why I like to share it with you. And I'll leave a link in the description below if you're interested in getting that map. And yeah, that ability to trust myself, to guide myself and give myself those nudges and reminders has been absolutely transformative. Okay, so we've talked about this mistake that I was making in my practice for so long, this unskillful way to navigate practice and life. We talked about why we might be doing it and the influences that might have led to us practicing in this unskillful way. And now let's talk about a more skillful way to practice. And to do that, let's just do a little demo together. I'm going to put this down. I'm going to move my new mic. Okay, ready for practice? I'm beginning by noticing what is here. So just checking into your inner experience right now. We can pretty much always find something to work with. And it might be something big or small. For the purposes of this video, please choose something medium-sized or small, not too big. And so it could be my earlier example of worrying about finances and money. It could be a really small annoyance, like something someone did in traffic today that kind of rubbed you the wrong way, or said something that kind of rubbed you the wrong way. And without getting too involved in replaying the story, just noticing whatever this difficulty is, negativity, annoyance, any sense of unease, and see if you can just notice it, notice what it feels like without judging it and without any agenda to change it. There might naturally arise a tendency that we shouldn't be feeling this way, especially if we identify as a good person. Maybe we might say to ourselves, this isn't something we should be feeling, a desire to be clear of this. And even if a desire to be clear of it, or a judgment arises, or a voice inside arises full of shoulds, seeing if we can just notice that too and allow that all to be. What can help us to get out of stories and mind after we've recognized and noticed is to drop into the body and see if you can find in the body any signal, any felt sense of this minor or medium-sized difficulty. Notice the way you breathe, notice any places in the body that you're holding. And so we're just taking stock, we're just noticing, okay, this is what's here right now. After answering the question, what is here, and having recognized what is here for you in this moment, we can move into asking ourselves, what does it need? Acknowledgement This is what is here right now, and this is how it is right now. Giving it space to be, allowing it. We can, through breath and posture, create space and bring in this sense that we're allowing it to be. We might offer it compassion, some softness, especially if you sense that you do have a tendency to want to change, force, control, or chase some specific outcome. If you tend to have expectations or want the practice to be productive, in this moment, can you soften all of that and just hold what is here with compassion? Continuing to make this part of you feel noticed and seen and heard, you can say to yourself, yes, this is here right now, and this is difficult. This too belongs. This is welcome here. This is part of my experience right now. And continuing to bring that sense of allowing deeper into our being, notice with your posture and breath. Is your breath and posture supporting this idea of allowing, creating space, accepting what is here in the moment? And for me, a lot of times that means a soft belly, shoulders that are gently back. Literally, there's space to hold and breathe and be with whatever is here. From here, we can move into the possibility of being with this part of us, this difficulty, with wisdom in a skillful way, with the wisdom that this is temporary and that this will pass. So there's nothing we need to do right now. Creating space, allowing it to move through us. Maybe along with that, also this wisdom that this does not necessarily belong to us. No sense of identification or ownership. Again, breathing and letting it move through us without force, without control, without any expectations, just giving it space to breathe and move. Notice when we take time to be with it, when we drop judgment and storytelling and reacting to it, we're dropping that second arrow. We're not adding another layer to the suffering, to the difficulty. Notice how it might feel differently to be just holding it in awareness, in a kind, compassionate awareness. And as you continue to rest here in this place of awareness, holding it all with openness and softness and acceptance, you might notice that something does shift, that something does feel better. But not because we've changed anything necessarily, not because we've gotten rid of anything, denied anything, pushed anything away, but because we have accepted, because we have created space for it all to be. In this way, we are leaning into the light, but recognizing that the fullness of experience is dark and light and all of it. Thank you. Thank you for practicing with me. So it's a really tricky thing because we do want to feel differently, and it's natural for us to want to feel better. And our practice can and should shift the way we feel. But when we go into it with the expectation, with this sense that we're going to control something, that we're going to change something, that's when we're really tightening around it and identifying with it. And that's when it just gets harder to let go of. When I was growing up, we would call them the Chinese finger traps. It's like the more you resist and pull and fight with it, the tighter it gets. But actually, when you relax is when you can free yourself. The irony is when we do go in without expectations of feeling better, we do feel better. We are able to free ourselves. But it's not the making the thing go away or pushing it away or fixing anything that frees us. It's the acceptance of all parts of us. It's the acceptance of how things are in that moment that really frees us. So there is this gentle dance. There is going to be a desire for change that arises. And so we can go into our practice, we can go into our lives recognizing that and just being with that too. So it's like this constant reapplying of acceptance and allowing that too, even when it's hard to allow and there's this sense of not allowing, can we then allow that to be too? So the idea is not compounding whatever arises with fighting it, but really allowing for it all to be. And I guess on a philosophical level, there's this understanding that we touch into when we practice skillfully in this way, that there's nothing wrong with anything that comes up in our inner experience, that it's really all part of the wholeness. And when we stop being at war with different parts of ourselves, we can really come into a true sense of peace. Another thing I should mention, this question used to come up a lot. I used to offer a weekly meditation event that was called Radical Acceptance. And often a question that I would get is radical acceptance about just giving up and not taking action and just letting yourself swim in negativity, or letting the world, if you're thinking about the external world, letting, negativity be out into the world, or letting yourself be a doormat because you're not doing anything about anything? And it's not that. The idea is that you're accepting your inner experience, whatever it is. And again, when we accept rather than resist, that soothes us. And when we're soothed and when we're back in a place of calm, that's when we have clarity. That's when we can truly see clearly and respond to whatever the situation is with wisdom and creativity. So it's really not about giving up or non-doing or non-taking action. It's about bringing ourselves back to a place where we can respond with wisdom. And I know this for myself too. When I'm in that place of fighting how I'm feeling and suppressing it and trying to put on a good face, putting on a positive face and pretending it's not happening, or forcing a good mood, that actually backfires, right? That actually a lot of times makes me spiral into more negativity. Somewhere along the way, things start feeling worse. And it's like there's this gripping and forcing. I think for me personally, masking things in that way has even led to depression, because I'm not really letting myself be. I'm not being authentic, and I'm not letting what needs to move through me move and process and eventually be released. When I am real about how I'm feeling and authentic, when I'm not skipping the step of acknowledgement and care, when I'm not bypassing those parts, I can even feel it in my body when I'm just really giving it space to be and again move and process. And if it's an old familiar pattern or story, sometimes I can even bring humor to it when I notice that sort of tape playing again. And again, being in that place of holding it in that kind and warm and maybe humorous awareness is when I can have clarity, then when I can respond to life effectively. And if there is a solution that's needed, I can meet it with clarity and creativity and actually be a lot more effective. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that I was able to articulate it clearly, and I would love to hear your personal experiences and anything that landed here for you or anything that didn't quite make sense to you. Yeah, I'd love to hear about all of it. Thank you for being here with me. I love you and I mean it. I'll see you next time.